Greetings, community, and welcome to Entropy in Comics and another edition of this week's Signed Books. And this week's Signed Books, I end up getting an opportunity to hang out with Bob Quinn, Mark Russell, and Jason Sean Alexander. Now, there were many others in that were also at the event. However, I must admit, I wasn't there to really see anybody else. So outside of one individual that I'll also make mention, Bill Sinkiewicz. Hey, Las Cruces. Hope you're doing well. Thank you for being here. Excuse me. I'll be drinking a lot of this. Scratchy throat. The only reason why I make mention of him is I'll touch on a story that kind of involves Bill, along with the fact that there was a three-way conversation happening between myself, Bill, and Jason that ended up transpiring for, God, I think we were there initially just touching base, having small talk for a good 5-10 minutes. Then that turned into true conversations that were into around 15 minutes. Then it came into like historical talk of how Jason got into comics, some of his roommates, past jobs. Same with Bill Sinkiewicz. He was talking about some of the past job services that he had. We were also talking about interviews, some of the regular routine interviews that they receive. And I think the reason why the conversations happened the way they did is I am far from conventional and or routine when it comes to having conversations. So let's start from the beginning. All right. Those in which that decide to hang out with me on the live, Las Cruces, dude, I always appreciate you, seriously. And those that decide to hang out with me on the rewind, I appreciate you being here. And, if it wasn't for you, I'd just basically be talking to myself, or I'd just be having these experiences and just not sharing them, I guess. I don't know. That being stated, I guess I just grateful to share it with you, the viewing world. And Las Cruces, being that you're hanging out with me on the live, dude, I truly appreciate you. And I guess this conversation is directed in some regard directly to you on the live. So here we go. I end up putting down on my calendar quite often a regiment of what I want to end up doing, let's say in any given time, a week, a bi-weekly time period, a month, bi-weekly, bi-monthly time period, what have you. Dude, I appreciate you being here, Meatwad. Thanks much. So in doing so, I get notifications on the regular. I received my notification that I was having a signing event happening at 2 p.m. at one of my shops that I was gearing up for as early as I want to say Monday, knowing that this signing event was on a Saturday at 2 p.m. After looking through my calendar and trying to just comb through, make sure I'm not missing anything, I ended up finding Friday evening. Now, there was an event that I was initially missing. This event that I initially was being absent of in my calendar, per se, I was just overlooking it, was happening at the exact same time at different portions in town. I want to say around 15 miles away. The beauty was there was really little traffic, so it did make my travels very expedient. So I was able to get from one place to the other within a half hour. That's including time to get to my car, leave, go through the traffic, park my car, and get out. I initially, after seeing all this and getting all my stuff last minute together, both last night and into that following day, and trying to get all my store folios together, trying to get all my red books, trying to get everything properly pulled and put in my window boards, as you guys know how I do my stuff. I end up finding out that was running a little late. So I did get to the first place I wanted to get to, which I was going in accordance to, being that I was thinking of time. I went to the closest place first, thinking that, that was optimal. Getting there, I ended up seeing a long line. So I decided what I wanted to do. And I assume a portion of this line was being that the dichotomy of the people that were there. They weren't there necessarily just to see writers or just the artists, but there were porn stars there. Seriously. Um, there were a representation of like 3 different publications. So 2 of which were comic, 1 of which was adult film oriented. And so it added to the already existing line by augmenting it with individuals of other interests. I'm trying to be as diplomatic as possible. So that did create a considerably, how should I say, congested line at that point of individuals that I just didn't really want to necessarily be in. So what I decided to do is, knowing that they're already a half hour to 45 minutes late into the actual signing event, I decided to go ahead and leave that event, go to the next event, figuring and hoping that the line wouldn't be as long. And by the time I got there, maybe the line would already die down. Beauty was, once I got there, yes, that was the case. There was only 2 people in front of me out there. They had left. I didn't notice anyone behind me, which allowed me then to not only have great conversations, but to seize an opportunity I've never seized before. After hanging out with John Comics for Kids at the end of San Diego Comic-Con, the final day, he and I were enjoying a good meal. And he, after showing me, I guess, once, and me asking, I know at least 1, maybe 2 other times, to see the sketches that he had done on his book, both at San Diego and time past, it really, I guess, unfroze a gear that I never decided to utilize in my brain. And then I decided to, in the case of now, start making requests of artists who have the opportunity to give me their time to just, again, make requests if they would consider to do a sketch. Now, I would never ask any artist to do so without first even having the possibility to give them something, monetarily speaking. So I knew that I just received a couple dollars out of the bank. I figured if I asked for something simple, they wouldn't charge for something, exorbitant as far as cost for the sketch. So today, or the other day, was my first test, and Bob Quinn was kind enough to go ahead and do a sketch, a bloodline for me on a book that both Bob and Mark worked on, which was Blood Hunters. Now, issue number 1 they worked on. Blood Hunters is, there'll be 3 stories in each book, an anthology of within the series, and there'll be this telling of stories. I want to say 4 issues, and they worked on the issue number 1 together. They worked together on quite a few projects, and they work well together. That's why, much like a couple of other teams, I like reading certain teams that work well together like that. Again, Jason, Sean, Alexander, which I'll be talking to about in a little bit, along with Rodney Barnes. They're another great team that also works well together, and almost anything that they decide that they would do, I probably would purchase. This is similar in the sense of when they decide that they do their Marvel stuff, and when they get into stuff that definitely is, symbiotic related or anything close to vampiric, I'm totally into. So I asked again to have this done, and I was so stoked. I am so, like I said, this was the first time I made request of someone to do some art for me. So when I was taken back, that initially he really wasn't going to ask for any money, and two, how fast and how well he did this art for a character that he knew nothing essentially of, outside of the supporting understanding of how it relates to the storyline. Just great work. And now, like I said, because of John, this is going to be my new norm. I'm going to start, when I have opportunities, to make requests of artists if they would consider to possibly do me a sketch. I would never make this request if I knew that there were people behind me. Uh, Nor would I want to do that if I ever felt that I would violate in any way how the artist would then want to do future events, or their normal criteria of what an event's supposed to transpire as. And I would never want to create a negative atmosphere. So I will always weigh that. And when I had left and given him some money, the owner pulled me aside, and he and I go back sometimes. So he had pulled me aside and thanked me, one, for giving him money, and two, for being as considerate as I was to the circumstance and to the artists in regard of how I approached them, and then again, in turn paid for his services. So I think what I'm getting across to everybody out there is, like anything else, one, diplomacy goes a long way. Two, when you're meeting these artists and creators, understand that they're people. Understand that they may be running late and they're not happy about it too, or whatever. Just try to play the situation accordingly. And in the case of like what happened with me, it worked out to my benefit to leave one place knowing that they were already running late. There was a huge line. I was already contesting with individuals that I didn't want to necessarily be there with or around, because it just wasn't my crowd. At the same point, I did want to meet individuals that were there. So, moving on, almost, I got to have some pretty cool conversation, and I had other stuff signed. So this is issue number 1. The signature on top is Russell, and the one on the bottom is Quinn. So Mark is the neat little, almost like hieroglyph. And then the squiggly on the bottom is Bob. So I got the sketch. I got issue number 1, which I've had that for a little bit. And then where is it? It should be right there. It is. So this is issue number 1, cover A. And then I did get a 1 in 25. And these came out, yes, just Wednesday. I like how they chose both the same color, same side of the panel. It really kind of works for me. I think it worked out rather well. At 2 weeks, everything can be gone. All right. Well, thank you. Okay, so that was the Bob Quinn. That was the Mark Russell stuff. I really didn't have a whole lot. I did not know them. I do know that Bob was offering some sketches when you bought a signature series from them, as an offer that they were offering, I don't know, a couple weeks ago. My point being is, I had a feeling that he would be generous enough to offer, and he was a very kind individual. So it just worked out, and I'm very grateful that I got that. So, like I said, it is something hopefully down the road, instead of just getting signatures, that I'll end up starting collecting some sketches. I have well over one, and I'm more likely I probably have 2 short boxes full of sketch covers. So down the road, I am definitely going to start getting sketches. All right, moving on from that. Oh, wait, I still got a story. Hold on. So I want to now, after talking about some of those books, I'm just going to try to quickly touch on, because I already know I'm like, 15 minutes deep into, and I only show 4 books deep into this. What I want to quickly touch on is, initially last year, I ended up talking to a couple of individuals that were talking about how Marvel is a publication where they're going to look at 2024 as their selling year. Under what pretenses they were going to go ahead and sell their issues, how they're going to entertain, if at all, new ongoing series, if not, how they're going to structure these series, so forth. I ended up getting a lot of cool information initially, and that's why I knew that their Marvel wasn't really entertaining any new ongoing series per se. Now, Ultimates was one that they were shocked on, and what they decided to do is keep that ball rolling as long as the sales are still there. There were ideas to make that world story overall a rather large one, but if they were just going to touch on aspects to support overall what initially that they want to do, which was give an Ultimate Spider-Man book. They wanted to relaunch the Ultimates and touch on initially, I think 3 issues on that, and just let it hang to allow a couple other successive books that were also this going to be anywhere from 3 to 6 issues. But due to the fact that Black Panther and other supporting series have been doing rather well, they're going to keep that ball rolling at least to the end of the year, to my understanding. Along with that, a couple other books that were initially not going to be considered, ongoing series. Well, also that ball is going to be considered, just keep rolling. What I'm getting at is this X-Force. So initially, when they decided to go ahead and relaunch that with Mark Russell writing, he was given the okay to go ahead and do 10 issues on that, which essentially, from my understanding, was going to be 2 sets of 2 arcs at 5 issues each arc. That was one of the only ones that I know that is going to be a quote unquote ongoing series, because there is a possibility that if the strength of that series is still up to a fundamentally sound position to continue, they will do essentially another set of 10. Which leads me to believe that sales for Marvel on a tangible level are doing well enough to where they're loosening the rein on some of the freedoms and lengths to which that some of these series can go to now, which is rather good news, because I do know that one series in particular that I really like over on the Boom side is quite the opposite. That series was supposed to go 12 issues, and they reneged on their initial deal with that writer and artist team, and now only allow them to do a 6-issue mini on that, which significantly is going to squash and snuff the overall timing and feel of the story. But we're going to get rushed in that last issue and a half, because I know that issue 4 was done by the time I was having a discussion with this individual. Point of all this. Whereas in the case of Marvel, they're seeming like they're going to entertain a little bit longer lengths in their ongoing and on their series. Those in which that initially were scheduled to be initially just minis are now going to be considered longer and continuing until, financially speaking, they're no longer feasible, and they'll try to make a decent ending. That's pretty good for us who like some of these series. So what I'm telling you, and I'll continue on with showing you books, as far as X-Force is concerned, and more likely a few other Marvel titles, you're going to start seeing them a little bit longer, and X-Force is guaranteed for 10 issues for the first 2 arcs, full series, hopefully ongoing for those that like the X stuff. I want to go ahead and thank Blake for hanging out with me and everyone else that is still here. Viva las cruces, and there's someone else that snuck in here and I don't see, but I appreciate you looking. Let's move on. Now, in 2019, November, I end up seeing Jason, Sean Alexander, and Rodney Barnes. This was, I think, 2 weeks after the local comic shop day extravaganza. That was when they end up selling the local comic shop day version of Philadelphia. Unfortunately, everywhere around me sold out like that. I missed out on that boat. I saw it and never even got to grab it. It was like I looked away. Someone's like, "Look at the monkey." I went, "Where? Where's the book?" Dang it. It was that quick. So I didn't get that. Now, however, I did receive a cover A. Like I said, I did see Rodney and Jason. I did get that signed by them. I had Jason sign a few other books. Jason was kind enough to do a sketch for Kai. He has a picture of Spawn done by Jason. What else did I get done that day? I ended up running into a friend of mine. All this, you're probably going, okay, well, all this was done at the Krusty Bunkers comic book shop. Now, that was Neil Adams' shop that just closed just this weekend today, 8/18. It's presently 3/14. They're going to be open for another hour and a half. No, I am not going to be there. I could not bring myself to do it. Too many good memories. Didn't want to hurt my soul. So I decided not only not to be there, but I wanted to share the story, which was I ended up seeing those guys there. I ended up having a great time. I ended up seeing a lot of people, and I ended up just overall having a wonderful experience. So when I end up seeing Rodney, I'm always looking for Jason. Jason has always been so busy, and their schedules are always opposing. The only time that they really get to really hang out is when they're actually at home. And what I mean by that is they live really rather close to one another. That's why it not only works out for them on a work schedule when they need to talk to one another and all that or see one another, but it also explains why they're so close. They're physically in a vicinity to be so close. So the cool thing was I finally got to see Jason after all these years. Truly, it's been nearly 5 years. I had a lot of books for him to sign, but I only brought 13. You're like, that's a lot. That's not. That's. So I ended up bringing 13 books. And the cool thing was I did have him sign another issue number 1. Did I end up doing the $1 things that Image does as far as the books? This used to be my reader. It is no longer. Now I had Jason sign on the bottom, and I had Rodney sign this at another comic book signing event back in 2024 at Earth 2 Comics. This was the last signing event that they had. I'm really starting to get bummed out. I don't want to think about that either. Now, the cool thing was I had that signed by Jason along with all these. Now, I had all these others signed by Rodney over the course of time, mostly at Earth 2 Comics. And I thought I saw him at a couple other places, but I think I just wrote Earth 2 Comics as a reference because I just knew that I had most of them signed there because I seen them twice over a course of 2 days. So anyways, so here's issue number 2. So that's Rodney in the silver, and that's Jason, Sean, Alexander right there in the gold. So there's issue number 2. 3. You see Rodney down there. I guess this is kind of a hard one to find. 4, because it's during the COVID time. There's Rodney there in the black. See that? Right there it is. And there's Jason up top. Hey, Legend, appreciate you being here, buddy. All right, where am I? Oh, yeah. Okay, 4, 5. I like how Jason was purposely matching up. Or opposing. 6. Look at that. This is a Jay Lee cover. I did see Jay Lee. I forgot I had this cover. Yeah. So I gotta get Jay Lee to sign this now. Seven, cover A. Jason on the bottom, Rodney on above. All right, now this is I have a couple of the Scotty Young covers. So my thing now, also along with getting sketches, I'm on a quest to start getting multiple signatures on books. It's all about getting no more just one. It's either two or more. So here we go with two, but I'm now looking for Scotty on this one and this one. And then here is, this is a significant one, is a key. So 30 is a first print, and then 2 of the seconds. All right, and then we just swing right back around. Now, this is another one that I want to just briefly touch on. The reason why is because, see, now that Rodney and everyone's looking at him, so he knows how to storyboard, he knows how to adapt. He does work for news programs, Showtime. He knows how to basically work any form of medium and media. What that allows him to do is be able to not only talk to individuals that know how to produce products, but he knows how to pitch it properly and understand what it takes to properly produce something. He himself also is a producer, director, so forth. The beauty about all that, it allows him to understand and talk to the individuals that can possibly make something transpire, as opposed to just spinning his wheels and just going through motions of hope and desire, when it's just all it does is just frustrate you and make you not want to continue. After many years of him understanding what it takes to do the job, and now getting so many different jobs in so many diverse different ways, again, we're not just talking Image, we're talking Marvel, we're talking other publications, again, we're also talking other mediums, we're talking streaming services, TV, so forth, even cartoons. He understands animation, Boondocks, so forth. The beauty about what I'm getting at this is, I think this is just pure suspicion that I believe he's talking to the right people to possibly develop the title of Philadelphia. And if I was a betting man, which I used to be heavily, it seems like to me he's gearing towards a streaming service, much like a Netflix, to do an ongoing series. It's the only thing that just seems like it just made sense. And as opposed to actually just pitching one thing, it only makes sense that if you also along pitch little side stories that you can throw in as Easter eggs, that it supports any ability to go ahead and do offshoots down the road if you want to go ahead and do successive offshoot stories, much like the way you would do something like a Star Wars, where you can Easter egg, or even a Disney where you can Easter egg and then drop future releases. I have strong suspicions that that's what's happening with Philadelphia, and I hope it does. It just seems that way, and it does explain why, one, Jason's been so busy, and two, outside of how busy he's been anyways, some of the things that I think Rodney's been up to of late just kind of works out on a timeline. So let's hope, let's pray. And I hope that someday that it will. But today I'm still just a Bill. I'm just kidding. So those of you who came on by and seen the books in which that I got signed, I appreciate you hanging out with me. These are the books in which that I ended up getting signing this week. I had a great time hanging out with the artists and creators, as I always do. And what I try to end up doing is end up getting great stories, which I did. I ended up learning that Jason ended up sharing a room with 2 others. These 2 others are successive and accomplished artists and creators of their own. Seriously, I would just say, look at who did the Goon, and where he came from and where Jason initially came from. It might blow your mind if you listen to some of these interviews with these people now. These people came around the same time, the same place. You'll also be interested to know that some of the jobs in which that they end up getting are very rudimentary. So when you ever hear an interview, and it usually starts something like this, with their interviewee, interviewer talking to the interviewee, I'm sorry, it usually goes something like this. Tell me a little about how you got into comics. And that person, doesn't matter if it's a writer, doesn't matter if it's an artist, usually replies with something on the level of they want to tell you how they saw something or someone showed them something and it just sparked interest. And that is very conventional, and most will tell you that that is how almost every interview starts. And most of them already have in their back pocket, much like an elevator pitch, how they're going to respond to that. Now, what I've noticed that is I never asked them that, and what I end up finding out by some of the things that I asked them was this, which tripped out both Bill and Jason. So, financially speaking, if you were to go ahead and make the same conclusions, that you made, would you have to make them the way you did and for the reasons why you did? And they're like, yeah. I mean, most people ask what got us into comics and if it was some inspiration of some artists, but we didn't have many options. And if we didn't necessarily sell some of the art that we had no way to feed ourselves. So what you're telling me is out of necessity, you decide that you didn't want to go ahead and clean up, I don't know, a male bathroom or pull, condoms out of some chick's toilet, or I mean, it got to that, right? And they're like, well, yeah, when you're waking up at 4 o'clock in the morning and you're looking at yourself, do I want to do this for a living? Or if I'm going to have to grind it out for a living, do I want to do it talking to people like you and doing some art or writing? I think the answer is kind of obvious, don't you? Well, absolutely. But most people don't ask that question for you to give that answer. Wow, you're right. So my point is don't be afraid to go ahead and engage on a level in which that is unconventional. At the same point, remember, these people are just people and they want to talk to you on a level in which they don't normally get to. I find that having a cool conversation with cool people just ends up being cool. And you end up finding out that these people want to go ahead and volunteer information that when I had left, both Bill and Sean were engaged in a conversation so deep that I'm not quite certain they even noticed I was gone, which just filled my heart. Like I said, I had a nice conversation. I had a great time hanging out with Bill Sienkiewicz, along with Jason Sean Alexander, Mark Russell, and Bill Quinn. There are many others there that I'm not certain if they want to know that I knew that they were there or not. But I do appreciate everyone not only showing up and showing not only a lot of respect to other artists and creators, but to the shops and support of the shops, understanding that this is what is their livelihood, along with beyond their own livelihood, along with the fans that have opportunity to as seldom or as often, in the case of me, as it is to see these individuals. We still hold them in a high regard and are super grateful that they do these things. And me, to speak on behalf of many in the community, all I want to say is I truly thank you. And to those who watch this, either on the live and or on the rewind, I want to say the same thing. Everything I just mentioned a little bit applies to you. I want to thank you for watching. I appreciate you truly. And that's it for me. Entropy, you stay well.